Okay, folks, we should be live in a minute or two. I'm just going to wait for the stream to start on my phone and then we'll get started. All right, looks like we are live. Yes, we are live. I can see 1 second. Okay. All right, folks, can you confirm on chat, please, if you can hear me and see me all right? I'll need a few confirmations before we get started. Kanishkar, good evening. Can you please confirm if Abhishek, good evening. Abhimanyu, okay, I'm Mr. Adu, okay. All right, can one of you confirm if the audio video is clear? Okay, it's clear. Thank you, Abhishek, for confirming. Shreya, good evening. Chayan, thanks for confirming. Nandini, good evening. Okay, great, awesome. Good to see many of you have joined in. Um, awesome, folks. So we'll get started. Okay. Now, if you're joining this session for the first time, I'll give you a bit of an introduction of myself, right? And I will, more importantly, introduce the session, right? If you're joining for the first time, and then we'll get started. Okay. Right. So my name is Jatin. I am the lead VRC faculty at 2IM CAT Coaching. I take care of the overall content development and training delivery for the VRC section. Okay. Now, quick background about myself. I have two passions in life. Okay, I always say this. My students must have been sick of hearing this at this point in time. I always repeat this, but it's true. I have two passions. One is the English language. I'm very passionate about the English language, and second is I'm very passionate about teaching. Okay, and these have been with me. These passions have been with me since childhood. It just took me a long time to sort of realize that this is what I want to do in life. But if I now look back, right since childhood, I was always very interested in these two things. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm a VRC coach, because these two, VRC coaching or CAT VRC coaching specifically, helps me combine these two passions, right? So that's my full-time job now. In my previous life, which was 2 years ago, I was in the corporate world. I was there for about 18 plus years, and then I made this big switch from the corporate world to teaching English. And I made this switch in July 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. Great timing, right? So yeah, I was in the corporate world in different roles and companies. The last company was Google. I was there for about 12 plus years, and then I quit in July 2020 and got into VRC coaching, CAT VRC coaching. Okay, all right. So that's about me. Now about the session. So this is 2IM's CAT VRC Blitzkrieg session. Now you might be familiar with the quant Blitzkrieg sessions that we have on Sundays, right? So we've started the VRC Blitzkrieg session series recently. Last week we did the first session. This is the second session, and we'll have many more sessions in this series coming up. Okay, so we're going to have a session every week. And in this series, what we're going to do is we're going to cover all the questions, all the VRC questions that appeared in CAT 2021. Okay, that's the whole point of this series. We did this for CAT 2020 as well. Now we're doing this for 21. So today we're going to discuss slot 1 RCs, as you can see, and we're going to discuss 2 RCs. Sorry about that. I'm just going to go back. Okay, slot 1, 2 RCs. We're going to discuss Utopia and Cuttlefish. Now, in the previous session, which was the first session last week, we discussed 2 RCs, which were the first 2 RCs of slot 1. The recording is available on our channel. You can go back and check it. All right. Okay. So today we're going to discuss these 2 passages. Now, as I said at the last session, if you want to make the best use of this session, try to go through these passages before you come for this session. Okay. I will give you 5 minutes to read, but I can't give you longer than that. So, try to read the passages before this session and then come prepared. We will do the questions together. You don't have to do the questions in advance. Just read the passages and come prepared. Okay, do this from the next session onwards. It will be more effective for you. Okay, and you will always find the passages in the video description. So currently also, if you go to the video description, you will see a PDF that will show you the two RCs that we're going to discuss today. All right, I would suggest you open the PDF and read the RCs there. I will let you know when to start. Okay, just give me 1 second and we will get started. Awesome. Now, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a mask, it's not because of COVID. It's because I have dental issues, right? Severe dental issues. My treatment is ongoing. Hopefully, next week you will see me without the mask. But even with the mask, I mean, you don't need to see my face. It doesn't matter, right? If it's a little distracting, you'll get used to it in like 5 minutes. Okay. All right. So yeah, it's because of the dental issues. It's quite annoying to for me as well. Okay, let's get started. Now, what I'll do is I will show you the first RC. Okay, and I would suggest again open the PDF in the description and read it from the PDF. Don't read it on the screen. Okay, read the RC. I'll give you 5 minutes, and then we will discuss the RC and then discuss the questions together. The first RC that we're going to discuss today is about Utopia. Okay, so this is reading comprehension 3, third RC of slot 1. Please open the PDF and start reading. In about 5 minutes, we will start discussing the RC. Okay, once you're done reading the RC, please type the main idea according to you in chat. Okay, so just extract the main idea in your own words, 3 to 4 sentences, and just send that in chat. Once I get a few answers, we'll start discussing. Okay, all right. All right, folks, keep reading. No, I'm not rushing you, but when you're done, either you type the main idea in chat or you just say done. Okay, so that once I start getting a few done, so I'll know when to start. Sanskriti said that she couldn't understand this RC at all. So see, Sanskriti, yes, you're correct. This RC is not easy at all. Okay, the language is complex. Okay, so don't worry about that. Number one, quite a few of you might have that feeling that, oh, it's not making any sense to me, right? But you know what? Just try whatever you can extract from this RC. Extract. Okay, don't give up. So I always tell people, focus on the main idea. So keep reading. Okay, don't get stuck on details and sentences and words. Just try to extract the main idea. Even if it's a broad main idea that you extract, it's fine. Okay, so give it a shot, and then of course we'll discuss it, so it will become clear to you. Okay, keep reading, folks. I'm just going to comment on a few main ideas that I'm seeing. Right. So Nirja said Nirja's main idea. Nirja, good job on the main idea. You are very much on the right track. Okay, Shrivat's comparison between utopian and dystopian lifestyle is not wrong, but it's too broad. Too broad. You'll have to be a little specific about what this passage is talking about. Just saying that it's a comparison is not going to suffice, right? How is it comparing it? What is it saying about that comparison? That has to be a part of your main idea. Okay. All right. Tanmay says debate about the utopian culture. Okay, fair enough, Tanmay. There is some sort of debate and disagreement there, but again, very broad. Okay, you'll have to be more specific for the main idea. Okay, all right, folks. Should we start discussing, or do you need more time? The problem in asking such questions on YouTube is because of the lag, the answer comes in late, right? But let's see. Let me know in chat if you should start discussing or if you need more time. All right, till then, let me read your main ideas. Ajay says utopia and dystopia share a common ground, but there are certain examples where dystopia and utopia may not be the same. Ajay, correct? Yeah, you're on the right track. Shreya says the concept of utopia is not perfect. Example of movies to describe utopia. Movies. Where did movies come from? Okay. Utopia and dystopia have a lot more in common. Movies, Shreya, I don't know where you got that movies bit from. I'm not sure about it. Okay, let's start discussing, folks. I think you guys are ready. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go paragraph by paragraph, like I always do. Okay. I will extract the main point of each paragraph. Okay, and then I'll extract the main idea for you. Once I extract the main idea, you can compare it with your main idea and see if we are on the same page. Okay, now before beginning, I always say this to my students. Always focus on the main idea. Remember, your main job when you're reading the passage, the entire passage, your job is to extract the main idea. Okay, remember, this is your job. You are not supposed to get stuck on words and sentences and additional details. There are many words in this RC that you won't understand. You can still extract the main idea. So don't get stuck on words and sentences. Don't attempt to understand each and every line. That's not how we approach reading or passages. If you want to be an effective reader, you have to focus on the main idea. At the end of the passage, you should be able to extract the main idea correctly, then you're good to go. If you haven't understood 20% or 30% of the passage, that's still okay, as long as you can extract the main idea. Okay, all right. So keep your focus on the main idea, and don't get stuck on details. Let's start discussing this. Okay, all right. Now it says we cannot travel outside a neighborhood without passports. All right, we must wear the same plain clothes. We must exchange our houses every 10 years. We cannot avoid labor. We all go to bed at the same time. It's starting to sound very strange. We have religious freedom, but we cannot deny that the soul dies with the body. Since, but for the fear of punishment, they would have nothing but contempt for the laws and customs of society. Okay, So now, till now, and keep talking to yourself. When you're reading a passage, of course, inner speech, right? Not aloud. Keep talking to yourself. This is clearly strange. You know, like the first sort of feeling that I got when I read this passage for the first time is this is sounding strange. It's not sounding real. Okay, and to me it sounded a little suffocating. We must wear the same plain clothes. We must exchange our houses every 10 years. You know, there's a lot of must there, a lot of rules. Okay, so it's sounding strange. All right, let's continue. In Moore's time, okay, in Moore's time, all right, for much of the population, given the plenty and security on offer, such restraints would not have seemed overly unreasonable. Okay, so these restraints, these rules, wouldn't have seemed overly unreasonable in Moore's time. To me, at least, it's seeming unreasonable. Let's continue. For modern readers, however, utopia appears to rely upon relentless transparency, the repression of variety, and the curtailment of privacy. Utopia provides security, but at what price? In both its external and internal relations, indeed, it seems perilously dystopian. Okay, now I think I understand by this point in time why it was seeming suffocating to me. Okay, so see, it says for modern readers, however, utopia appears to rely upon blah blah blah. Okay, and then it says in Moore's time. Now, even if you don't know who Moore was most likely an author. But even if you don't know who Moore is, you can see that it's comparing old versus modern. Okay, because it says for modern readers, however. So you can infer that it's comparing old versus modern, right? Or it's talking about two different eras, right? So what it's saying is, it's talking about utopia for sure. It's describing utopia. The author is describing utopia. So this is the description of utopia. Now, but for modern readers, this utopia appears to be negative. Okay, this concept of utopia that the author just described probably would have worked in Moore's time because there was a lot of plenty and security on offer. So these restraints, people were okay with it. People were okay with these restraints because there was a lot of security and there was abundance of resources. But in modern readers or in modern society, people look at this with a different perception. They're perceiving it separate, they're perceiving it differently. They're not perceiving it in a positive way, they're perceiving it in a negative way. That's why the author says, in both its external and internal relations, indeed it seems perilously dystopian. So what was utopia of the past seems dystopian now. Okay, that's what the main point is, right? I hope you understand that. Now let me just identify the main point. So the main point of this paragraph is what, right? The author talks about utopia, right? And it says that utopia of the past, where people were okay with it, okay, seems like dystopia of present. Sorry, my writing is horrible. So utopia of the past seems like dystopia of present, right? And the author says, right, utopia provides security, but at what price? So modern readers are looking at it differently. Or, yeah, okay, that's the main point. Let's continue. Such a conclusion might be fortified by examining selectively the tradition which follows more on these points. Okay, fortified means strengthened. This often portrays societies where it would be almost impossible for man to be depraved or wicked. Interesting. So it's portraying a society, this utopia concept is portraying a society where it's almost impossible for man to be depraved or wicked. Okay, this is achieved both through institutions and modes which underpin the common life. The passions are regulated and inequalities of wealth and distinction are minimized. Needs, vanity and emulation are restrained, often by prizing equality and holding riches in contempt. The desire for public power is curbed. Marriage and sexual intercourse are often controlled. In Tommaso Campanella's The City of the Sun, the first great literary utopia after Moore's, relations are forbidden to men before the age of 21 and women before 19. So it's talking about a lot of rules and restrictions, isn't it? Okay, they're elaborating on this concept of utopia. They're giving you a lot of restrictions. Passions are regulated. Inequalities of wealth and distinction are minimized. Okay, desire for public power is curbed. Riches are held in contempt. There are restrictions around marriage and sexual intercourse. Lot of restrictions and rules, and that's why probably the author says that it would almost be impossible for man to be depraved or wicked. If there are so many restrictions and if there is so much equality, then it's impossible for man to be depraved or wicked. Right? So that's what the author is elaborating on this concept of utopia. Okay? All right, let's continue. They keep describing this. So, communal child rearing is normal. For Campanella, this commences at age 2. Greater simplicity of life, living according to nature, is often a result. The desire for simplicity and purity are closely related. People become more alike in appearance. Okay, equality, similarity. People become more alike in appearance, opinion, and outlook than they often have been. Unity, order, and homogeneity thus prevail at the cost of individuality and diversity. There is no individuality. There is no diversity. Everybody seems to be the same. They wear the same clothes. They follow the same rules. There is equality in terms of wealth. Everything is homogeneous. Okay. This model, as J.C. Davis demonstrates, dominated early modern utopianism. And utopian homogeneity remains a familiar theme well into the 20th century. Okay. Now, long paragraph, right? So that's why as you saw, I paused and I extracted the main point till then. This is what I do in RCs also, right? I keep talking to myself in my head. Okay, this is what I've understood so far, right? And then I proceed. So it solidifies the understanding. You can even make notes if you want. It will take additional time, but it might help you with comprehension. So what is this paragraph talking about? Number one, this paragraph is describing utopia or the concept of utopia from More's time. It highlights the fact that there are so many restrictions. It highlights the equality. It highlights the homogeneity, right? All of that. So it describes the characteristics of utopia. And then it says that this model, the description, dominated early modern utopianism. And utopian homogeneity remains a familiar theme well into the 20th century. So because of this homogeneity, because of this equality, because of these rules, it was almost impossible for man to be depraved or wicked. So this is describing utopia, this paragraph. Okay? All right. Let's move on. I'll answer questions later after finishing the paragraph. Okay. Given these considerations, it is not unreasonable to take as a starting point here the hypothesis that utopia and dystopia evidently share more in common than is often supposed. Interesting. So the author is saying that utopia and dystopia are actually more common than we think they are. And it makes sense. Connect it with the previous idea. What did the author say in the first paragraph? The utopia of More's time. Okay, or you can infer it as past. Utopia of the past is dystopia of the modern world. Okay, so that's why the author here is saying that they evidently share more in common. What seemed like utopia earlier in a different time seems like dystopia now. So there are similarities. Okay, indeed they might be twins, the progeny of the same parents. Insofar as this proves to be the case, my linkage of both here will be uncomfortably close for some readers. You will find it difficult to digest. If somebody comes and tells you utopia and dystopia are similar, it's obviously disturbing, right? By the way, utopia is what? The definition of utopia is something which is in a perfect condition, a society which is perfect. Dystopia is completely the opposite, where there is complete chaos, utter chaos. Okay, so you have order and perfection versus chaos. So if you tells you that these are similar, obviously it's going to be uncomfortable for some readers. Yet we should not mistake this argument for the assertion that all utopias are or tend to produce dystopias. Okay, those who defend this proposition will find that their association here is not nearly close enough. For we have only to acknowledge the existence of thousands of successful intentional communities in which a cooperative ethos predominates and where harmony without coercion is the rule to set aside such an assertion. So what is the author saying here? The author is basically saying that utopia and dystopia have a lot of things in common. Okay, but the author also says don't mistake this to believe that all utopias tend to produce dystopias. The author is clearly saying that. Okay, here the individual submersion in the group is consensual. Though this concept is not unproblematic, it results not in enslavement, but voluntary submission to group norms. Harmony is achieved without harming others. Now connect this with the last part of the paragraph, previous paragraph. The author is saying that there are thousands of examples of successful intentional communities where individual submersion to rules is consensual. So it results not in enslavement, but voluntary submission to group norms. So basically the author is saying that there are societies where individuals voluntarily, of their own accord, submit to rules. They're not forced to follow rules. Okay, they voluntarily follow rules, and that the author says that utopia doesn't result into dystopia because there is consent involved. Okay, so harmony is achieved without harming others. All right. So now, if I were to extract the main idea of this passage, what is the author talking about? See, the author is definitely talking about, the main point is definitely that the utopia of an past or the utopia of the Moore's time seems like dystopia now. So utopia and dystopia share quite a bit in common, is what the author is saying, right? And the author sort of explains that, right? Why does the utopia of the past seem like dystopia of the present? Because utopia in Moore's time, the restraints were acceptable. But now the restraints are not acceptable because people look at it as, okay, it's coming at the cost of individuality and diversity, right? It's coming at the cost of curtailment of privacy and stuff like that. So that's the reason people perceive that as dystopia. And the author also says that don't take this to believe that all utopias result into dystopia. There are some utopias which are actual utopias where individuals voluntarily submit to norms. Not by force and coercion, but by voluntary submission. That's the main idea. Okay, I know I gave you a long explanation, but it was essential for this passage. Please tell me in chat if this is clear, if you have any questions, if this matched your main idea. If there's any particular line or paragraph that confused you, let me know and we can discuss that before going to the questions. I need some feedback on chat, people. I'll wait for your feedback to come in before proceeding. Is this clear? Sanskriti, you said that this passage was quite difficult for you. Is it making sense now? Okay, so Aditya says clear, Rahul says clear. Okay, now if you haven't attended my session for the first time, my students know this. I thrive on interaction, so I need your interaction in chat. Yeah, otherwise the session won't make sense. Okay, all right, great, awesome. So a lot of you are saying it's clear, amazing, awesome. Did it match your main idea, people? Sort of course, the words don't have to match, but were we on the same page? Rahul says, can we turn off the slow mode? Okay, all right. I'll request my team, my teammate. I'm just talking to my teammate. Hitesh, if it's possible to reduce the slow mode or turn it off in the live session, please do that. Otherwise, Rahul, next time we'll definitely do it. Okay. Ajit says, Sanskriti says, makes sense. Perfect, Sanskriti. I'm glad to hear that. There is a model discussed. Does it has any connection with literature? Yes, Ajit, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay. I didn't want to extract that because I didn't want to focus on details, but when it says Moore's time, right? Okay, so Moore is an author. So it's definitely talking about the literature definition of utopia versus how people perceive it in real life in modern society. So definitely this is talking about that literature model. Okay, I think somewhere it says that also, right? This model might have been something that's definitely the literature model. So it's a literature model of utopia. You're bang on. Okay, perfect, folks. Good. I'm glad that this is making sense. Let's now discuss. Now comes the fun part. Okay, we'll start discussing questions. All right. Okay. Now, first of all, this passage was complex. Okay, so don't worry if you sort of didn't get the main idea correctly or didn't understand. Okay, it is a complex passage. All right, but let's look at the questions now. Now, what we'll do for questions is we'll run a poll on YouTube. Don't type your answers on chat because we want everyone to attempt. We'll run a poll and you can vote on the poll. We'll run the poll for about 2 minutes per question. Okay. All right, let's do question number 1. Following from the passage, which one of the following may be seen as a characteristic of a utopian society. So you can read the options. Please read all the options. Take your time and then choose your answer. Don't rush through this. Okay, we'll have the poll up any minute, any second rather, and then we will get started. Okay. Okay, just hang on, people, for the poll. It will come up. It'll come up. Don't worry about it. We're still sometimes YouTube runs into issues. Yes, it's up. Awesome. Thank you, Hitesh. Go for it, folks. Please take your time. We'll have 2 minutes to answer this question. Okay, let's have everyone should vote. Okay, let's have the bunch of you, quite a few of you on the live stream. Let's have everyone's votes. You still have time. Okay, folks, we'll end the poll in 30 seconds and then we'll discuss. So please punch in your vote now. All right, the poll will end anytime now. Please punch in your vote. Excuse me. All right, and it has ended. Okay, wow, this is interesting. You guys have an overwhelming majority in this one. Okay, let's hope you folks are correct. So 66% of you have chosen this 2 as your first choice, followed by 3 and 4, which is equal. Okay, and then there are few takers for 1 as well. Okay, all right, but your overwhelming 66% of your choices number 2. Let's discuss this question. Now, see, I always say for questions, right? See, when you're reading the whole passage, you focus on the main idea. Don't get stuck on detailed sentences and words. Okay. Now, when you come to question, of course, there is a possibility that the question will focus on a specific portion or a detail of the passage. At that time, you can always go back to that specific portion, reread it, and answer it. Okay. But of course, we don't go back and reread the whole passage. If you've read the passage effectively, you'll have a mental map of what information is where. So you'll immediately know when you read the question, okay, I can go and find it there, or I can understand it from there. So you go back to that specific portion, reread it. Okay, that's okay. That's not a problem. All right. Okay, let's discuss this. Following from the passage, which one of the following may be seen as a characteristic of a utopian society? So we have to pick the option which is a characteristic of a utopian society. All right. That means three options are not characteristics. Okay. All right. A society without any laws to restrain one's individuality. Interesting. Society without any laws to restrain one's individuality. Isn't this opposite of what the passage describes as utopia? Remember, you have to stick to the passage. Now, this is where it gets tricky. See, we have a definition of utopia in our head. I might think that, oh, utopia is something where there are no laws and I have full individuality as a modern reader. But we are not talking about our definition of utopia. You have to stick to the passage. The passage describes utopia, in fact, as a society where there are a lot of laws and norms and customs. Right? So this is completely opposite to what the passage is saying. Okay, don't bring in your opinion. Don't get biased with your opinion. Stick to what's there in the passage. Okay, this can't be your answer. This is completely opposite to what the passage is saying. Okay, all right. Number two, institutional surveillance of every individual to ensure his or her security and welfare. Now, this to you it might seem suffocating, but again, stick to the passage. Right? What does the passage say? When the passage describes utopia, it talks a lot about security. Talks a lot about rules and restrictions and restraints that are put on individuals to maintain security and welfare. Isn't it? That's what the passage says, that literature definition of utopia or the old definition of utopia. So this seems correct, right? This might be a characteristic where you would have like government surveillance or institutional surveillance of every individual to make sure that there is complete security. Remember in the second paragraph it says, this kind of society, it would be impossible for a man to be wicked or depraved. Surveillance can achieve that. Okay, this seems like the right answer. Let's park it. Of course, because we're parking it, we haven't gone through 3 and 4. You have to go through all the options. A society where public power is earned through merit rather than through privilege. Now, let me take you back to the passage. What does the passage say here? There was public power mentioned somewhere. If you've read it properly, it will come up in your mental map. Look at this sentence. The desire for public power is curbed. Where? In utopia. It curbs the desire for public power. So there is no earning of public power. This can't be the characteristic of a utopia, because in utopia, public power is curbed, or desire for public power is curbed. This is not your answer. The regulation of homogeneity. Oh, sounds correct. Utopia is homogeneous. Through promoting competitive heterogeneity. Where is this coming from? You know, sometimes you can break the options and figure out where the flaw is. Now break it into two parts. There is A and B. Regulation of homogeneity seems very correct. Through promoting competitive heterogeneity. Where is this coming from? This is completely out of scope. The passage doesn't say it. So the answer is definitely number 2. Okay. Awesome. Well done, folks. Okay. 66% of you got it right. Those who didn't, don't worry. I hope you understood. Read the options carefully. Go back and confirm your answers. You will get it. Okay. The more you practice, the better you will get it. Let's go to question number 2. Which sequence of birds? I'm not going to read the question. Why am I reading the question? You read the question, solve it, and then I'll discuss it. We'll run the poll now. Okay, the poll should be up any minute. And it's up. Go for it, folks. You'll have 2 minutes. Finish it. Yeah, Aditya is saying, Aditya, what you're saying happens to me all the time. Okay, and it's very annoying. So, Aditya, so by the way, folks, keep solving. You have time. Um, yes, so Aditya is saying that it's funny that he read intentional communities and international communities. That happens to me also. Okay, so that's why you have to like read with a lot of focus and concentration, because sometimes, if you read a word wrongly, it can sort of change the meaning, right? So you'll have to be a little sort of careful with that. Okay, just be conscious of it, and you'll get better. That's what I do. I tell myself before beginning the passage that I'm going to be conscious of that. Okay, 45 more seconds for the poll to end. Okay, please punch in your answer. Okay, people, please vote. Everyone should just vote, and we'll discuss it. All right, it'll end any second. Okay. Okay. So this question, right? This question is tricky. It's probably one of the, I would say, in slot one. Okay. Uh, in this RC, it's definitely the trickiest question. Overall, also, if I see the questions in slot one for RC, right, this was one of the most tricky questions. Okay. Honestly, I would say question selection strategy matters a lot. If this question would have come in my exam, I was in slot three, but if this question would have come in my exam, I would have likely not attempted this question. Okay, because it is quite tricky and you have to be smart with your question selection. Okay, all right, so the poll is up, and see, your poll clearly reflects that it's a tricky question, right? You're split between 1 and 4. Okay, so this is your first choice, this is also your first choice because 30% very closely followed by 2, and then few takers for 3. Okay, I'm not surprised. It's a very, very tricky question. Now, I'll tell you one thing about this. Just remember. So, this is basically, it's a main idea question. Okay, the approach that you have to follow is the main idea. So, instead of giving you sentences for the main idea, it's giving you keywords. So, this is a main idea question. But it becomes even more tricky because they give you keywords. So, whenever you have these keyword type questions, and these questions have become very popular in CAT, by the way, they started first appearing in CAT 2020. They appeared again in 2021. Most likely, it will appear in 2022 also. These questions are tricky. Okay, see, main idea questions anyway are a little tricky. When you have these keywords, it becomes even more tricky because the options are very close to each other. So remember that. I'm not saying leave out every keyword question, but remember that most likely it will be tricky. Okay, all right. Which sequence of words below best captures the narrative of the passage? So the way the passage is narrated is what they're asking. So you have to pick keywords which will describe the main points in the passage. Okay, remember you have to focus on the main points because it is a main idea question. We are not going to pick a keyword which talks about a specific detail. That will not answer the question. Narrative of the passage is determined by main points. So you have to pick keywords that talk about the critical points in the passage. Okay, and we will follow a certain order in this case because it talks about narrative. Narrative is like how is it narrated? Once, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we will follow a certain order. Okay, because of the word narrative. Okay, so let's see. Which sequence of words below best captures the narrative of the passage? Curtailment of privacy, dystopia, utopia, intentional community. All right. Now, utopia for sure, right? The passage is about utopia. Come on, right? Dystopia, yeah, quite likely, because I mean the passage does talk about utopia and dystopia and sort of like says that they're similar and stuff. So dystopia is also a keyword. Intentional community. Now the question that you have to ask yourself is this one of the main points, right? It is actually one of the main points. If you go back and read the passage, right? See, the author talks about utopia and dystopia, right? One second. Let me clear my horrible handwriting. Okay. The author talks about utopia and dystopia. The author says that, hey, you know what? Utopia and dystopia have more in common than you think. But then, in the end, the author makes a very critical point that please don't mistake this to consider that all utopias will result into dystopia. Because there are intentional communities where people submit to norms voluntarily. So think about it in this way. It is a main point because the author's overarching point is utopia and dystopia have a lot in common. But don't mistake or don't be under the impression that all utopias result in dystopia. That is a key point. So intentional community is definitely a keyword which is important in the passage. Okay, great. So we have three keywords which are very important. Curtailment of privacy. Think about this. Curtailment of privacy is just one aspect that has been mentioned here. Okay, what does it say? For modern readers, however, utopia appears to rely upon relentless transparency, the repression of variety, and the curtailment of privacy. It's one of the three aspects. How will it be the main point? It's one of the three aspects. It's a very specific point. It's unlikely to be the main point. Okay, all right. So we'll park this. We'll park this and move on. But this doesn't look like the right answer. Okay. All right, I'm not going to write park, but doesn't look like the right answer. Relentless transparency, homogeneity, utopia, dystopia. Again, these two, yes. Homogeneity is also a key point in the second paragraph. The author stresses on that. The author says that utopia, the main characteristic is homogeneity. The author talks a lot about that. So that's a key point. Relentless transparency, again, the same problem. It's one specific point. Unlikely to be the right answer. You have to go for the main ideas. Okay. Utopia, very good. Security, okay, let's think about this. Dystopia, coercion. Coercion, very, very specific. Again, in the last paragraph, very, very specific. Coercion was mentioned to explain the part of intentional community. It's a very specific point. Unlikely to be your answer. Okay, let's look at the fourth one. Utopia, yes. Security, let's see. Homogeneity, yes. Intentional community, yes. Now, the question is security a main word? Let's go back to the first paragraph. What does the author say here? What is the main point of the first paragraph? Let's recap that. The author says that utopia of the past or Moore's time is dystopia of the present, or seems the present. Why does it seem like dystopia? And he asks a question. Utopia provides security, but at what price? It's quite important because security helps the author drive the point that utopia of the past is dystopia of the present. So that security word is very, very important. Because what the author there is saying is that it's a trade-off. For security, you have to give away a lot of things. And what do you have to give away? You have to give away your individuality, right? You have to give away your independence to get security. That is the main point because it helps differentiate or rather talk about that concept of utopia of the past is dystopia of the present. So let's go back. The answer is definitely number 4. Okay, because these are broad main points that it's focusing on. The problem with 1, 2, and 3 is the specific points that are coming in. Curtailment of privacy, relentless transparency, and coercion. Remember, this is a main idea question. So focus on main points and follow a certain order also because it's narrative. So it is the order. The order is correct. Utopia, security, homogeneity, intentional community. Okay. All right, folks. So I know long explanation, but this is important. It is a difficult question. Okay. And the answer is 4. All right. Shreya is asking, is narrative same as the flow of the passage? Because that's how I marked 4th option. Correct, Shreya. Yes, it is the flow of the passage. Okay. So you have to keep some sort of sequence in mind. Again, see, I'll explain this to you. Okay. The order is not so important here. What is important is that you pick the main points. The reason why I'm saying that keep the order in mind because of the way the question is framed. If this question was framed, and it is framed like that, which of the below options best captures the keywords of the passage? Right? Which of the below options best captures the main keywords of the passage? There, obviously, you don't have to look at order. Here also, order is secondary. What first is what are the keywords that are explaining the main points? Okay. All right. Great. Now I'm gonna. Yes, Ajay says hair splitting approach. Correct, Ajay. It is hair splitting. It is hair splitting. And see, now we have the luxury of time, right? In the exam, it's going to be a little difficult to sort of figure this out. That's why this question, I don't know if it's a good idea to attempt this. Was a good idea to attempt this question in the exam. Okay. Anyway, Shibi says, "Sir, but dystopia is also part of main idea, and it's missing in the answer choice 4. Could you please clear this doubt?" Yes, Shibi, you're correct. You're absolutely correct. So, Shibi, we have to choose the best one. Okay. Yes, the best one should have had dystopia. Utopia, dystopia, homogeneity, intentional community would have been great, but we don't have that. The problem with, so now you have to choose the best one. This has a problem of this specific point. This also has that problem. This also has that problem. This doesn't have that problem. These are 4 keywords. Yes, the 5th keyword is not included, but still this is the best option available. So remember, in CAT we always choose the best option, and that's why CAT VRC gets tricky, because often they will not give you the perfect answer. You'll have to choose the best answer. Okay. All right, people, let's move on. RC question 3. Do this. We'll run the poll and you can start attempting this. It's an inference question. Remember, in inference, we always look for evidence. Okay. Whatever inference you're drawing, please get evidence and then draw the inference. Don't get it out from thin air. Okay. All right. We'll have the poll now. Okay. The poll is up. Go for it, people. You'll have 2 minutes. Give this question your best shot. You will get it correct. Okay. It's not an easy question, but you'll get it correct if you put your mind to it. The votes are coming in quite fast for this question. Hopefully, you folks are finding it manageable. We'll see. Okay, we will end the poll in about 30 seconds. Okay. Right. It will end any second now. All right. Okay. Okay. So there is a majority. Yes, there is 56% of you have chosen 3. Okay. So you are saying that, okay, this one. Then 25% of you have chosen 2. Okay. Um, wait. Am I getting it wrong? No. 3 is first choice, and then 2 is the second choice. Okay. Then 1 is your third choice. Okay. Yeah, I got it correct. Confirming it once again. Yeah. Okay. So third is the first choice. All right. Now let's look at this question. All of the following statements can be inferred from the passage except. Now this is an except question which is very popular in CAT. Okay. This question will sometimes confuse you. I'll give you an easy way out. Just hear me out. When you're reading this question, okay, read it without except first. Just read this part. Don't even read except. Just say all of the following statements can be inferred from the passage. What does it mean? All the 4 options can be inferred from the passage. Now you read except. Now what does it mean? That means 3 can be inferred. Okay. 1 cannot be inferred. Your job is to pick the one that you cannot infer. This is how you understand the question. You break it in the exam also like that. So let's go for the 1. Now I'm kind of sure that some of you might have misinterpreted the question and might have happened. It happens all the time. Okay. Still you get used to it. So we have to pick the one that we can't infer. Okay. That means 3 we are able to infer. Let's see. Number 1. It is possible to see utopias as dystopias. Okay. Now again, you can break it up. Yes, it's correct. You can infer that from the passage with a change in perspective. Yeah. Because one person's utopia could be seen as, oh, brilliant. This is what the first paragraph says, right? You can infer that. Moore's time, modern time, change in perspectives, utopia, dystopia, similarity. This can be inferred. This is not your answer. Okay. Utopian and dystopian societies are twins, the progeny of the same parents. Can you infer this from the passage? Now, this was the second choice. Utopian and dystopian societies are twins, the progeny of the same parents. Yes, of course, the passage talks about twins, right? The passage exactly mentions this. Now, what did I tell you? When you have questions, you should go back to the passage and confirm your answers. Of course, if you're completely sure, then go for it. But in many cases, you should go back and confirm. Okay. Now, what does it say? Utopian and dystopian societies are twins, the progeny of the same parents. So that means this option is saying they're exactly the same, isn't it? Okay. Let's go back to the passage. Where does the passage talk about this? Your mental map will tell you. Now let's read it again. Okay. Indeed, they might be twins, the progeny of the same parents. Read what is before. Given these considerations, it's not unreasonable to take as a starting point here the hypothesis, the idea that utopia and dystopia evidently share more in common that is often supposed. Indeed, they might be twins. Is the author saying with 100% certainty that they are twins? Yes or no? Can you tell me in chat? I'll wait for this one to come through. Yes, Shivam says might be. Correct. I think that even came before I discussed. Folks, this is how they trick you in CAT. This is a very, very common trick. What they'll do is they'll include words, exact words from the passage. So the moment you read it, your mind is going to tell you, aha, this is the correct answer. Why? Because I've read this before. Exact words. The moment you see exact words, I'm not saying it will be the wrong answer. No, please don't take it like that. It's not a rule. It should be a trigger. It should be a trigger for you to go back and quickly check. Are they mentioning it in the same context, in the same tone, in the same certainty, or have they distorted it? This is a distorted option. What the evil question setter has done is they have distorted it. They've given you the same words and they tricked you. It's very common. Okay, it happens. But this is the time to learn, right? So this is not correct, because the author wasn't certain. If this is true, then the author would have said they're exactly the same. The author is not saying that. Okay, this is your answer. I'm giving it away right now. Okay, but let's see 3. Utopian societies exist in a long tradition. Oh, you chose this, right? Utopian societies exist in a long tradition of literature dealing with imaginary people, practicing imaginary customs in imaginary worlds. It is true. You can infer that. Okay, long tradition, definitely. Now the question is, how do we infer literature and imaginary and all of that? There must be some inference there. Of course, there is more, but A lot of people might not know who More is, but let's see. Okay, all right. Let's look at this. First of all, it is one second. Yeah. First of all, think about it. It is utopia. What is the definition of utopia? A perfect world. Can there be a perfect world? No. So utopia, by definition, a utopia would be imaginary, right? That is one. So you can infer it like that. Also, it talks about models. So I forgot his name, but somebody pointed it out, right? Brilliantly. That they spoke about models somewhere. I can't figure it out, but it does say things like, oh yeah, this model, as J.C. Davis demonstrates, okay, and it also says in Tommaso Campanella's The City of the Sun, the first great literary utopia after More. There you go. Okay, so it is literature. So therefore, that answer can be inferred. Okay, it's a little tricky, especially if you don't have a literature background. So no, many conceptions of utopian societies emphasize the importance of social uniformity. This is absolutely can be inferred. So your answer is 2. Okay, so what is your learning from this question? Don't fall for the question set as trap. When you have same words from the passage, it's just a trigger to go back and confirm. It can definitely be the right answer, but go back and confirm. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's do question 4. We'll go a little faster, so because we have one more passage to go. Perfect. Aditya, great point for modern readers. Absolutely. Very, very good point. It says readers in the first paragraph. That's also literature. Correct. Correct. Nirja, the fact that it's literature, right, and it's utopia, you have to consider keep the definition of utopia in mind as well. Imaginary is an appropriate inference to make from there because it's in literature, it's utopia, so it's fine. There is a difference between ideal and imaginary, but imaginary is not a wrong inference to make from here. Okay, all right. The poll will be up, folks. We'll give you we'll do this quickly. Okay. And we've turned off the slow mode. Rahul, based on your request, we've turned it off. No, slow mode is, of course, nobody is spamming, and you guys won't spam, I know. Yeah, but hopefully nobody would spam. Otherwise, we'll have to turn it back on. The poll is up, folks. You can vote. Right. We'll end the poll in 30 seconds, folks. We'll have to go a little faster, just in the interest of time. Oh, okay. The poll has ended quite quickly. All right. Okay. So, number one. So, 36% of you have chosen 1. All right, just give me 1 second. Then you have 23, 23 for 3 and 4. Okay, and then there are 16% of you have chosen 2. Okay, all right. So yeah, not an overwhelming majority, but let's see. All of the following arguments. I hope I'm not on mute. No, I'm not. Okay. All right. All of the following arguments are made in the passage except. Again, there is an except question. So read this first. All of the following arguments are made in the passage. So one argument is not made. We have to pick that. Okay. All right. In Moore's time, there was plenty and security. So people did not need restraints that could appear unreasonable. This seems like something that has been mentioned in the passage, right? I mean, you immediately you'll get a trigger. This was mentioned in the first paragraph, isn't it? In Moore's time, there was plenty and security, so people did not need restraints that could appear unreasonable. Yes, the passage mentions plenty, security, restraints, all in the first paragraph. But now you have to go back and confirm. What does the passage say? The passage says, in Moore's time, for much of the population, given the plenty and security in offer, such restraints would not have seemed overly unreasonable. That means, given the plenty, they had plenty and security, so therefore people accepted those restraints. But were there restraints in Moore's time? Definitely. We cannot travel outside our neighborhood without passports. We must wear the same plain clothes. We have religious freedom, but there were definitely restraints. Restraints were there, but people were okay with those restraints because of the plenty and security on offer. What does the option say? So people did not need restraints. Absolutely not. This is a distortion. Again, they have done the same thing in the same passage, used words from the passage and totally distorted it. The paragraph doesn't say people did not need restraints. There were restraints. People were okay with those restraints. This is a distortion. This is not an argument made in the passage. This is your answer. Let's look at the other answers. The tradition of utopian literature has often shown societies in which would be nearly impossible. Absolutely. This is second paragraph. We even spoke about it, right? Depraved and wicked. Go back and read that line. This is an argument made in the passage. There have been thousands of communities. Yes, it says thousands. It says thousands. Go back and read it. Where homogeneity and stability have been achieved through choice rather than by force. Intentional communities. Thousands. There's a word. You can go back and read it. In early modern utopianism, the stability of utopian society was seen to be achieved only with individual surrendering the sense of self. Yes, you can infer this because in the last paragraph, the author says intentional, what is it? Intentional community, right? Yeah, not international. Intentional community is where there is submersion, is consensual. You consent to these norms. So you can infer that in Moore's time or in the previous time, these were forced. There was coercion involved. Okay, so that is an argument. The answer is definitely number 1. Okay, all right, folks. So you can go back and check your answers later. Let's go to the next passage now. Cuttlefish. We're going to discuss cuttlefish now. I think you'll find this passage easier. You might find it easier than the previous one in terms of the passage. Okay, open the PDF in your description. Don't read it on the screen. I'll give you 5 minutes to read it, and then we will start discussing the passage. Go for it, and don't forget to like, please. Okay, please. If you're finding the session useful, like it. Only if you're finding it useful. Of course, I get an ego thing, no, when I see the likes. But likes help us because if you like, the YouTube algorithm will show this video to a lot of people. So it'll help others. It will help us as well. As to I am finding it useful, please like and please subscribe. Okay, go for it, folks. Read the session. Jyotirmay, you're absolutely correct. Dopamine hit. Every like is a dopamine hit. Yes. And then very soon you become addicted to these likes. Okay, anyway, I should shut up. Please read the paragraph, passage. Shibi, I'll explain that. Okay, just let everybody read the passage, then we'll probably quickly go back and then start again. Okay. Okay, all right, folks, you can keep reading for another minute. I'm just going to comment on a few main ideas, okay, and then we'll start discussing in a minute. You can continue reading. Um, Prashant says delayed gratification and self-control among animals. Okay, now Prashant, see, this is very broad because the focus is on cuttlefish. Clearly, right? The passage talks about cuttlefish, so we can't say animals in our main idea. That becomes very broad, right? So it's definitely about self-control in cuttlefish. You'll have to mention that. Okay, so it's broad, so keep that in mind for next time. Tanmay says self-control and study of cuttlefish to show the results. Tanmay, you're very much on the right track. Good job. Sanskriti says main ideas about the behavioral change in cuttlefish, how much they can control themselves. Very good. Also, it does compare it with other organisms too. Now, Sanskriti, the first part is bang on. The last part is an additional point. It's not a part of your main idea. The comparison with other organisms is not a part of the main idea. Keep that in mind. Okay. Jyotirmay says the passage talks about the intelligence of the cuttlefish, which is demonstrated through a modified marshmallow test, and says that more study needs to be done regarding it. Okay, Jyotirmay, on the right track. Rather than intelligence, it focuses on self-control. Okay, it does connect it with intelligence, but the main point is self-control. Nirja says that this passage infers that cuttlefish are intelligent creatures as they can display self-control. Very good. It talks about an experiment which proves the same. Bang on. Bang on. Very good, Nirja. Okay, good stuff. So I just wanted to comment on a few ones so that you guys can keep that in mind. Shibi had a point about the previous question. Very quickly, I'm going to go there and then we'll move on. Okay. 1 second, folks. Okay. All of the following, this is, yeah, okay. All of the following arguments are made in the passage except that. What was Shibi's point? Shibi, what was your point? Can you please repeat it? Let me see. I agree, but I had confusion amongst the first and the fourth option because of the word only. Okay, got it. So Shibi is saying that there is only. Okay, in early modern utopianism, the stability of utopian societies was seen to be achieved only with individuals surrendering the sense of. Okay, this can be inferred, Shibi, because the way literature utopian model is described. Okay, the recurring theme is that there are restraints. Right? It talks about restraints. It talks about coercion. It talks about force. It talks about rules. Right? That's a big part of the way they describe that literature utopian model. So that's why only can be inferred. Okay, didn't seem like the individuals had a choice, right? And to achieve stability, they had to sort of do that. Okay, so it can be inferred. All right, I hope that clarifies. Let's move on, folks. Now we're going to discuss the passage and then we'll discuss the questions. Now, this passage might have seemed more manageable than the previous passage because it's concrete. Right, it's talking about cuttlefish, which is a living creature. The previous passage was an idea, right? It was abstract. So abstract passages tend to be a little, difficult to understand. So how you can conquer them is start reading abstract material. Okay, make it a part of get more and more familiar with abstract, so philosophy and psychology and stuff like that. Get more and more familiar with that, then it becomes easier. Okay. Anyway, let's read this. Cuttlefish are full of personality, as behavioral ecologist Alexander Schnell found out while researching the cephalopod's potential to display self-control. Interesting. Self-control is thought to be the cornerstone of intelligence. Oh, very nice. As it is an important prerequisite for complex decision-making and planning for the future, says Schnell. Okay, one paragraph done. What is the paragraph talking about? Fairly manageable paragraph. It talks about cuttlefish. It says cuttlefish exhibit self-control. Okay. And self-control is thought to be the main aspect of intelligence. That's the main point. Let's move on. Schnell's study used a modified version of the marshmallow test. Modified version. During the original marshmallow test, psychologist Walter Mischel presented children between age 4 and 6 with one marshmallow. He told them that if they waited 15 minutes and didn't eat it, he would give them a second marshmallow. A long-term follow-up study showed that the children who waited for the second marshmallow had more success later in their life. So this is a study. What is the study doing? The study is basically talking about the effect of self-control. Right? So this marshmallow test is connected to that self-control point in the previous paragraph. This test was to exhibit self-control. So basically, with kids, again, we don't have to go into the details of it, right? But it's connected to self-control. And then interestingly, it says a long-term follow-up study showed that children who waited for the second marshmallow, who exhibited self-control, had more success later in life. Okay, let's not get into the details. Let's move on. The cuttlefish version of the experiment looked a lot different, modified version. The researchers worked with 6 cuttlefish under 9 months old and presented them with seafood instead of sweets. Okay, so chocolates for kids and seafood for them. Preliminary experiments showed that cuttlefish's favorite food is live grass shrimp, while raw prawns are so-so and Asian shore crab is nearly unacceptable. Okay, so these are cuttlefish preferences of food. Since the researchers couldn't explain to the cuttlefish that they would need to wait for the shrimp, obviously. Kids, you can explain, obviously, you can't explain this to cuttlefish. They trained them to recognize certain shapes that indicated when a food item would become available. So now it should become clear by now that the author is describing the experiment in detail, right? It spoke about how cuttlefish exhibit self-control. Then it talks about an experiment or a study that was done, and it's describing that study in detail. Okay, the symbols were pasted on transparent drawers so that the cuttlefish could see the food that was stored inside. All right, why did they use certain shapes? Because obviously they couldn't explain to the cuttlefish that they would need to wait for the shrimp. So that's why they trained them to recognize certain shapes. The symbols were pasted on transparent drawers so that the cuttlefish could see the food that was stored inside. One drawer labeled with a circle to mean immediate held raw king prawn. Another drawer labeled with a triangle to mean delayed held live grass shrimp. During a control experiment, square labels meant never. Okay, so they had a triangle, they had a square, and they had a circle, meaning different things. And they trained them to identify these shapes. We already know that live grass shrimp was their favorite food. It is connected to delayed. They're testing self-control. Raw king prawn is something which is so-so for them, so they were giving it to them immediately. Okay, now see, the thing is the experiment has a lot of intricacies. You don't have to understand each and every aspect of the experiment now. You just have to broadly understand it. So what does that mean? You have to understand that this is a modified version of the marshmallow test. Okay, cuttlefish cannot be explained that they have to wait for the shrimp, so they train them to recognize shapes: triangle, circle, and square. It was connected to delayed and immediate, live shrimp versus prawns. This is the broad understanding that you should be drawing at this point in time. Don't try to understand each and every aspect of the experiment. There's no point. If there is a question, we'll come back to it. But understand the broad main point of this paragraph. Okay, let's move on. If their self-control is flexible, okay, this is a quote. If their self-control is flexible and I hadn't, sorry, just give me 1 second, folks. Okay, sorry, yeah. If their self-control is flexible and I hadn't just trained them to wait in any context, you would expect the cuttlefish to take the immediate reward in the control experiment, even if it is their second preference. Says Schnell, and that's what they did. What does it say? So, if their self-control is flexible and if they hadn't just trained them to wait in any context, you would expect the cuttlefish to take the immediate reward, even if it is their second preference. Okay, that showed the researchers that cuttlefish wouldn't reject the prawns if it was only food available. They're doing a control experiment, right? So prawns is so-so for them. But when prawns is the only food available in front of them, they eat it. That means they consume prawns. They're okay with prawns. When it's the only choice available, they eat it. That's what the author is talking about. So talking about the control experiment. Okay. In the experimental trials, the cuttlefish did not jump on the prawns if the live grass shrimp were labeled with a triangle. Triangle means delayed, remember. Many waited for the shrimp drawer to open up. Wow, interesting. So prawns were immediately available to them. Shrimp was in a glass enclosure closed with a triangle. These cuttlefish waited for the shrimp drawer to open up. Very interesting. So they were exhibiting self-control. Each time the cuttlefish showed it could wait, the researchers stacked another 10 seconds. Very, very wicked. On to the next round of waiting before releasing the shrimp. The longest that a cuttlefish waited was 130 seconds. What does this demonstrate? This paragraph demonstrates that this experiment that they did actually proved that cuttlefish exhibit self-control, because they waited for shrimp drawer to open up for as long as 130 seconds, even when prawns were immediately available. So this experiment proved that cuttlefish exhibited self-control. Let's move on. Schnell says that the cuttlefish usually sat at the bottom of the tank and looked at the two food items while they waited. But sometimes they would turn away from the king prawn as if to distract themselves from the temptation of the immediate reward. How interesting. How interesting. Right? So they are waiting for the shrimp. They are hungry. They see the prawns. To distract themselves, they look away sometimes. Behaving like humans. In past studies, humans, chimpanzees, parrots, and dogs also tried to distract themselves while waiting for a reward. So interesting. So interesting. Okay. All right. Not every species can use self control. But most of the animals that can, and read this statement carefully by the way, otherwise you won't get it. Not every species can use self control, but most of the animals that can, pause, share another trait in common, long social lives. So that means most of the animals that exhibit self control also exhibit another trait, long social lives. Cuttlefish, on the other hand, are solitary creatures that don't form relationships even with mates or young. So it's an exception to that correlation. Usually, species that exhibit self control have long social lives. Cuttlefish are solitary creatures. We don't know if living in a social group is important for complex cognition unless we also show those abilities are lacking in less social species, says comparative psychologist Jennifer Wong. So, this paragraph talks about the two factors, right? Species exhibiting self control also have another trait in common, long social lives. Most of them. But cuttlefish are an exception to that. They don't, they're solitary creatures, but they still exhibit self control. Okay? What's the main idea here? The main idea is definitely about cuttlefish exhibiting self control and the experiment that was done to prove that. That is definitely the main idea, right? So it's cuttlefish, self control, the experiment that proved it. And then in the end, the author also brings up a important point where it connects self control with long social lives or social behavior and says how cuttlefish is an exception to that. Okay, that's the main idea. Okay, people, I hope this is clear. This is a concrete passage, it should be clear. Okay, let's go to the questions. All right, in the meantime, if you have any questions about the passage, any things that you didn't understand, feel free to type that. Let's go to question 1. We'll have the poll up. Read the question carefully, please. Read all the options, answer it. Go back to the passage, confirm specific portions. Okay, the poll is up. Please vote. If you haven't liked, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna repeat that. If you haven't liked the stream, please like it. As I said, I need my dopamine hits. Okay, so please like it if you haven't, and subscribe to our channel also if you haven't subscribed. This is the best YouTube channel, and 2am is the best cat coaching company. Kidding. I'm actually not kidding. It is true. Anyway, please subscribe, please like, okay? Okay, we will end the poll in 30 seconds. Okay, please punch in your answers. and it will end any second. Let's have more votes. Yep, we'll have the results any second now. Okay, all right. Hmm. Nail biting. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Oh, whoa. Oh, there is a good majority in this one. Okay, so 61% of you have chosen one as your first answer. Oh, it's one, two, three, four. Very nice. Okay, so two, three, and four. Am I correct? Yes. Okay. One is your overwhelmingly you've chosen one. Let's see if you guys have if you folks are correct. All of the following constitute a point of difference between the original and modified versions of the marshmallow test, except you know how to solve this. Okay, so we're talking about the difference between the original and modified versions of the marshmallow test. Three options will point out a difference. One option is not a difference. We have to pick the one that's not a difference. Okay, the former correlated self-control, oh sorry, the former, as in the former test, the former version, the former correlated self-control and future success. Yeah, it did that. It did that. While the latter correlated self-control and survival advantages. Now again, break it up. Okay, this is correct. It did that with children. While the latter correlated self-control and survival advantages. Did it correlate self-control and survival advantages? Is there any evidence in the passage that talks about linking it to survival advantages? No. Okay, let's park this. Okay, the former was performed over a longer time span than the latter. This is true. You can go back and check. Okay, it talks about years coming back, following up with the children and stuff like that. So clearly the time span was longer. Okay, this is not the answer. The former had human subjects. The latter, oh, brilliant. This can't be the answer. Okay, it can't be right because it was children versus cuttlefish. The former used verbal communication with the subjects, while the latter had to develop symbolic means of communication. Yes, absolutely. This is your answer. Well done, folks. One is your answer. Okay, let's go to question two. Okay, go for it. Now, I'm going to give you a heads up. This is a tricky question. Okay, do not rush through it. Okay, I'm giving you a heads up because I want you to give it your best shot. Give it your best shot, take your time. I'll give you 2.5 minutes instead of two. Go for it. Okay. Right. We'll give you 30 more seconds, folks. All right. Go for it, and then we'll discuss. Aditya, thank you. Thank you for saying that. This makes me very happy. Makes us very happy. Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. Thanks for the shout out. Okay, the poll will end, people, any second now. Okay, just punch in whatever you think is the correct answer, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, interesting. So you still have a good majority, almost 50%. Okay, I was expecting like more of a split. Okay, which one of the following, if true, would best complement the passage's findings? Again, you're going for one, two. Wait, am I reading this right? I am reading this right. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting. Okay, so this is 1, 38%. Sorry, 48%. 2 is 38%. 3 is 10%. 4 is few takers. Okay, listen to this carefully. Okay, this is a super tricky question. Okay, there's a lot of debate, by the way, about this question like last year after the exam. A lot of debate across institutes, across students, across coaches, and all of that. And then I think people filed a lot of objections for this question, but the CAT authorities did not budge. Okay, they did not change their answer, though the original answer and the answer key stayed. Okay, now we'll discuss it. It is tricky. Again, question selection strategy. Had this been my slot and my question, I probably wouldn't have attempted it. Okay, so I have to be a little shrewd with that. Okay, let's see. Which one of the following, if true, would best complement the passage's findings? Now, first of all, understand this. Last time also there was some confusion about this. Folks, when it says if true, you have to assume that the options are true. Even if the options go against the passage, you have to assume that they are true. Please understand this. When they say if true, that means you're going to assume, stop then, even if as absurd as the option sounds, you have to assume that it's true and then evaluate it. Sometimes it will be against what the passage is saying. It's fine. Consider that as true and then move on. Okay, that's what I'm saying. So you have to assume, like a blank assumption. Okay, would best complement the passage's findings. Okay, so that means it has to support the passage's findings. It has to, you can also say it has to add on to the passage's findings or strengthen the passage's findings. Remember the word complement. This can also confuse you. If you check the dictionary meaning of complement, it means that there is something which is adding on to something existing. If this option is complementing the passage's findings, it is adding to the passage's findings, it is strengthening it. So complementing can also mean strengthening, supporting, adding. The adding part is important. Okay, check the dictionary meaning. All right. Okay, let's move on. Now, cuttlefish wait longer than 100 seconds for the shrimp drawer to open up. I want you to focus on this adding bit. Okay, let's choose an option which adds to what is already given in the passage or strengthens it in some way. Take that, and then we'll discuss the complement one. Okay. Cuttlefish wait longer than 100 seconds for the shrimp drawer to open up. What does the passage say? The passage says that the longest that a cuttlefish waited was for 130 seconds. The passage is already telling you that it waited for, longest it waited for 130 seconds. Now this option, how does it complement? Yes, it supports maybe, but does it add to what is given in the passage? Does it enhance? Complement, you can also say enhance. Does it enhance the findings of the passage? Does it add to what is already stated in the passage? It doesn't. It doesn't add anything. It just says they wait longer than 100 seconds. The passage tells you 130 seconds. You're getting my point? Okay, process it a little bit. right? We'll come back to it. So let's park this for now. I know this was the first choice. I'm not surprised. This was the debate last year also. We'll come down to that. Cuttlefish live in big groups that exhibit sociability. Now, the passage says the opposite of this, isn't it? The passage says they're solitary creatures. They don't even live with their mates or whatever. But remember, it says if true. You have to assume that this is true. Okay, even if it contradicts the passage, we're going to assume that this is true. Does it add to the information? Does it support or strengthen? Let's see. Let's go back 1 second. Okay, one piece of information that was given to you in the last paragraph is not every species can use self-control, but most of the animals that can share, sorry, see, again I'm reading it wrong. Not every species can use self-control, but most of the animals that can share another trait in common, long social lives. Cuttlefish, on the other hand, are solitary creatures that don't form relationships. Now, this part here says that most of the species that exhibit self-control also have long social lives. This is a part of your passage. It's an element of your passage. Okay. Now, the passage says cuttlefish are solitary creatures. So, it kind of weakens this part, right? This statement that is mentioned, the cuttlefish weakens it because cuttlefish are solitary creatures. But now suddenly if the option says that, hey, you know what, cuttlefish live in big groups or are social creatures, wouldn't that enhance that? Wouldn't that support it? Wouldn't that strengthen it? Currently it's weakening it because we're saying cuttlefish are solitary creatures. But now the option is saying assume that they are social creatures. It enhances that part that we just highlighted. Let's park this answer. Okay. Cuttlefish cannot distinguish between geometrical shapes. Now, if this was true, it goes against the passage. That's fine. We have to assume that this is true. If this is true, the whole experiment goes for a toss. What does the experiment say? The experiment says they exhibit self-control. How was this proved? Because they were trained to learn geometrical shapes, and triangle was associated with delayed. If they cannot distinguish between geometrical shapes, the whole experiment will go for a toss. Forget complementing, it will weaken the passage's findings. Terribly weaken it. Okay, so think of it this way. No, we are not ruling out this option because it's against the passage. No, that's fine if true. But it weakens the passage. We are looking for strengthening. This cannot be our answer. Cuttlefish are equally fond of live grass, shrimp, and drop rod. If this is true, again the experiment goes for a toss. The experiment is based on the fact that there is a preference, and that's why grass shrimp was in the glass enclosure and prawn was available immediately. Again, the experiment goes for a toss. Okay, between 1 and 2, I've already explained. The answer is 2. It's tricky. It is mad tricky. Okay, there was a big debate last year about this. Okay, a lot of objections filed, but CAT did not budge. One seems very attractive, but again I'm saying go back and check the dictionary. It confused me also, by the way. I'm sounding very confident right now because I've spent time on this question. It confused me when I saw it because I said complement. Oh, complement is like support, adding, enhance. You have to take strengthen. You have to interpret it, take it as strengthen. Then it makes sense. Is this the best formed question? No. Well, there is ambiguity in this question. It is what it is. Okay. All right. We're going to go to question 3. Go for it. Long question. Read it properly. We'll run the poll. Nirjar, explain it. I'll explain it. Okay. Just solve this question for now. I'll go back to it. Okay. Okay, folks, we'll end it in 30 seconds. Okay, so kind of the options are longer and it requires you to think as well, because you have to kind of like, I wouldn't say it's a critical reasoning question, but it does require thought. It's a little time consuming that way. Okay, it'll end any second. Okay, I'll start discussing. All right. In which one of the following scenarios would the cuttlefish's behavior demonstrate self-control? Okay, so we have to choose the option where the cuttlefish's behavior, which is described in the options, would demonstrate self-control. So these options, this is kind of an extrapolation question, kind of, because what's happening is these options that they've given you are not directly mentioned in the passage. These are not options from the scenarios from the passage. These are new scenarios. So extrapolation question generally gives you random scenarios. They've given you related scenarios, but still extrapolation. So you'll have to like extrapolate the information. All right. Overwhelming majority. You've gone again. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm amazed. What is happening here? Okay. So is there a glitch in YouTube? I hope not. Okay. So this is 1. Then you have 2, 2, and then finally 3. Okay, so 67% of you have chosen 1. Let's see. In which one of the following scenarios would the cuttlefish's behavior demonstrate self-control? Okay, all right. Asian show crabs and raw prawns are simultaneously released. Remember, they don't prefer. Their favorite food is shrimp. Prawns are second, and crabs are like no. While a live grass shrimp drawer labeled with a triangle means delayed, you can go and check, is placed in front of the cuttlefish to be opened after a minute. Triangled is delayed, isn't it? Okay. Now, see, this is where you can go back and concentrate on the specifics of the experiment. In the first go, you don't have to understand each and every detail. But this one, you will have to go back and see, okay, triangle means delayed, square means this, blah, blah, blah. Okay. All right. So let's just quickly see that so that I don't get it wrong. What does triangle mean? Circle meant immediate, triangle meant delayed, and square meant never. Okay, great. So we have that. All right. So Asian shore crabs and raw prawns are simultaneously released, while a live grass shrimp drawer labeled with a triangle is placed in front of the cuttlefish to be opened after 1 minute. Okay, and shrimp is their favorite food, right? So shrimp is put in a grass drawer, which means delayed, and they are given Asian shore crabs and raw prawns simultaneously. This would demonstrate self-control, right? Because you've given them 2 options, and their favorite option is in a glass enclosure with the delayed sign. So it does demonstrate self-control. Let's park this. Okay. Raw prawns are released while a live grass shrimp drawer labeled with a square is placed in front of the cuttlefish. Remember, geometrical shapes are very important. They were trained to learn those geometrical shapes. Square means never. How will this demonstrate self-control? It won't. Okay. Live grass shrimp are released while 2 raw prawn drawers labeled with a circle and triangle respectively are placed in front of the cuttlefish. The triangle labeled drawer is opened after 50 seconds. If you're going to release live grass shrimp immediately, how will you demonstrate self-control? You can't. Raw prawns are released while an Asian show crab drawer labeled with a triangle is placed in front of the cuttlefish to be opened after 1 minute. There is no shrimp. You need shrimp to demonstrate self-control because that's their favorite food. This is the answer. Okay. All right. So this is where you have to go back, check the experiment specifics, understand the details, and then answer the question. Okay. Last question. Let's do this. Let's run the poll. Which one of the following cannot be inferred from Alexander Schnell's experiment? DLR and VRC. Correct. Yes. I mean, yes, that's a very good point. We'll run the poll, by the way. See, it's interesting what you're saying because think about it. The way VRC is, right? Yes, it's testing your reading skills and it's testing your English, but it's all connected to analysis in a way, right? So it's analysis through English. They play on words, they do extrapolation, there is inferences. All of this draws from your analytical skills as well, right? Are you able, just being good at English is not going to get you a high percentile. You have to be good at English, but you should be able to analyze that content as well, or critical reasoning, right? That's important. So yeah, VRC that way also is analytical in nature. Okay, people. I always think I'll cover 3 RCs in 2 hours or 1.5 hours, and it never happens because sometimes I just get carried away with these things. But I hope that's okay with you. I mean, I feel like there should be sufficient explanation for CAT passages, right? Because these are CAT passages. So, okay. Cannot be inferred. Okay. Okay, we'll end the poll in 30 seconds. Okay, before I discuss this question, if you have any questions pending, right? I mean, some of the questions probably I wasn't able to answer on chat. Feel free to comment on the YouTube video. I am pretty, I keep checking it regularly, so I will jump in and respond to those comments. Even those people who are watching it afterwards, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put that in the comment. I will respond to it. Okay, either from my own handle or the 2IM handle. And yes, last ditch attempt to make you like and subscribe if you want. I'm sounding like this YouTuber now. Okay, anyway, we'll end the poll any second now. Has it ended? No, it will end. It will end now. Okay, which one of the following cannot be inferred from Alexandra Schnell's experiment? I hope everybody read cannot. Not all the time it will be in capital letters or bolded or whatever. So please read the questions very carefully. Don't speed through the questions. Read each and every word of the question and the options. Okay, evaluate all the options before you choose the right option. Which one of the following cannot be inferred from Alexandra Schnell's experiment? So Alexandra Schnell is the experiment, the marshmallow person. Oh, 87% of you have chosen. Very nice. I hope you folks are correct. Okay, let's see. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4 again? No, it's 1, 3, 2, 4. All right, 6%, 3%, 3%. 87%. Overwhelmingly, you guys have gone for 1. All right. Which one of the following cannot be inferred? Intelligence in a species is impossible without sociability. Distortion. Impossible without sociability. Is that what the passage says? No. Passage does not say it's impossible without sociability. You can go back and check the last paragraph. Okay. So this is definitely your answer. Okay. Well done, folks. Well done. 3 marks in your bag. Like human children, cuttlefish are capable of self-control. Yes. The comparison was there. Both can exhibit self-control. Cuttlefish exert self-control with the help of diversions. Yes, we saw that. Cuttlefish exercise choice. Of course they exercise choice. Brilliant. The answer is, this is 3 marks, not 3 option. This is the correct one. Fantastic. Well done. This is a good end to the positive end to the session. Okay. So, awesome. So this brings us to the end of the RCs of slot 1. Next week when we meet, we will continue with RCs. We'll do BA at the end. We'll do slot 2 RCs. Okay. So we'll put up the notification, whatever the PDF. We'll do 2 RCs for slot 2. You can read the passages in advance and come prepared. Okay. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed the session. Leave your feedback, leave your questions in the comments. If you're my student, you can ping me on WhatsApp. We can talk. But I'd love to hear your feedback. All right. Awesome, folks. I'll see you next week and the week after that and the week after that. Okay. All the best. Keep reading and all the best for your prep. Take care.